Let's go live now to the former member for Wentworth and the former Australian ambassador to Israel, Dave Sharma. Dave Sharma, thanks for your time. First of all, on the broader decision here, Labor says it should be a matter for the final status negotiations between the parties in the Middle East dispute. What's your response to that?
Well, look, I think what that ignores is the fact that Australia has been treating Jerusalem as the capital of Israel for well over 70 years. I mean, when the Australian government, a Labor government, the Chifley government, recognised the State of Israel in January 1949, Israel was in control of West Jerusalem at that time. And since that time, every Australian Prime Minister who has visited Israel, Labor or Liberal, has gone to Jerusalem, paid a visit on the Prime Minister in his or her office in Jerusalem, visited the Knesset, met with numerous government ministries. It flies in the face of the facts on the ground and the treatment that we've accorded Israel throughout our diplomatic relationship. I think it's wrong in policy terms, but it's also wrong particularly at this time. And I don't think Penny Wong has given a justification for why this decision she's made is in Australia's national interest or what national interest it serves. She's reacting against a decision that the Morrison government took, but she hasn't articulated why the Labor government is taking this decision, and I think it requires an explanation.
You spoke about the facts on the ground, but as a former ambassador to Israel, you know as well the embassy, the ambassador's residence, all of that's in Tel Aviv.
That's right. Look, the embassy is in Tel Aviv. A number of countries have their embassies in Jerusalem, including the United States. This is not to say, I mean, you can recognise Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, as I think you should. That does not rule out the prospect of there being a future Palestinian capital in Jerusalem as well. That has always been how a two-state solution has been envisaged. But no one, absolutely no one, envisages a two-state solution where Israel has no official presence in Jerusalem. And effectively, that's what this Labor decision today seems to envisage, a two-state solution that no one else, least of all Israel, is bought into.
So when you talk about the prospect of that two-state solution, that basically would see West Jerusalem Israeli, East Jerusalem would be under Palestinian control under any such agreement. That's what you're suggesting.
But look, I think that any of these final status talks which have come close to reaching an agreement, the Camp David process, the Annapolis process, even the recent effort under Secretary of State John Kerry during the Obama administration, they've envisaged some sort of shared sovereignty over the capital of Jerusalem, where the Palestinians would have an official presence of their own within Jerusalem, but Israel, of course, would maintain its presence in Jerusalem. And no one, I think, thinks that would be other than the case, which is why this decision to withdraw Australia's recognition of West Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, or Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, is so strange and unusual and without foundation, because no one expects that Jerusalem will be anything other than continue to be Israel's capital, no matter what the two-state solution is that's finally agreed upon. And as I said, this does not preclude a future Palestinian capital in part of Jerusalem. That's always what's been envisaged here.
Was it a politically motivated decision by the former Prime Minister Scott Morrison to make this announcement, to recognise West Jerusalem in the lead up to a vote in Wentworth? Was it to try and win over seats from the Jewish Australian community?
Well, no, I don't think so. And I'd make 2 points in response to that. Firstly, if it didn't work. I didn't win the seat. But secondly, we continued it as a policy and we took it to the 2019 election. I mean, the Morrison government did not resolve from that policy after the Wentworth by-election. We stuck with it and we reaffirmed it on a number of occasions since. That was our policy. That remains the Liberal Party's policy as well. And I think, you have to ask the question now, particularly when you've seen Labor adopt 3 positions over the past 24 hours on this, what's behind their policy on this? Why did they seemingly change their policy on the website yesterday, have the Foreign Minister Penny Wong say that nothing had changed this morning, and then have a decision from the Cabinet saying, yes, things have changed? What's driving this? We haven't had a single national interest justification for this or a single explanation of how this will further Australian interests.
Well, the argument that Penny Wong put today at her news conference was that this would be something that, if it were to eventuate, would be another block in the road to a two-state solution. That's essentially the fundamental point, in that Australia has always seen West Jerusalem, or Jerusalem more broadly, as a final status question for the negotiations.
Well, I think it misinterprets our role in that conflict somewhat to think that Australia's position on the sovereignty over Jerusalem is going to have a material impact on the ability of the parties to reach an agreement, is one point. But secondly, and as I made clear earlier, it's very clear that West Jerusalem, at least, will remain under Israeli sovereignty under any feasible two-state solution or peace agreement. And the third point is, we have always behaved in accordance with the view that Jerusalem is Israel's capital. I mean, is Penny Wong now, when she visits Israel, is she going to refuse to visit Jerusalem? Is she going to refuse to meet Israeli government counterparts? Is she going to refuse to meet the Israeli foreign minister in Jerusalem because she's saying that Australia does not recognise Israel's sovereignty there? I think these are the questions that she needs to answer.
How damaging is the history, not just recent, over many years now, of the settlements into those areas held notionally by the Palestinian Authority? But as someone who spent a lot of time in Israel, how much of a setback has that process been of settlements, which obviously seen by the Palestinian people as incursions into their territory?
Well, undoubtedly settlements are an obstacle to peace, and I wouldn't walk away from that. And under any peace agreement and a creation of a future Palestinian state, those settlements would either need to be withdrawn, or the citizens there would need to be agreeable to living under some sort of Palestinian sovereignty. But I'd make the point here, Israel has withdrawn settlements before in exchange for peace. Israel had settled the Sinai Peninsula until a peace agreement was reached with Egypt, and Israeli settlements and citizens were withdrawn. Israel withdrew settlements from Gaza unilaterally in 2005 in the hope of reaching a peace deal there. Israel has shown that it's prepared to give up land for peace in its peace treaty with Egypt, in its peace treaty with Jordan. I don't think this would be any different. So yes, they are an obstacle to peace, but they are not an insurmountable one by any stretch.